Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I made this card. We're going to go a little bit darker, a little bit grungier, but the same process. So let's go ahead and get into it. Welcome to a Technique Junkies video. This is Tracy, and today we're going to be using this Statue of Liberty stamp from the June release. Let me say that again, Statue of Liberty. We'll get it straight. And we're going to be using the God Bless the USA stamp, also from the June release. And remember, you can get 10% off if you use my discount code TJ10Color. And I've got a stencil from A Colorful Life Designs. We've got our VersaFine Claire. I'm trying to dig it up here. Okay, we've got our Antique Linen Distress Ink. We've got our VersaFine Claire in Twilight. And then I've got Catherine Pooler in Dress Blues and Cranberry Fizz. We'll be using some embossing powder and just some other miscellaneous tools that I'll show you when they come up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out by stamping out my Statue of Liberty here. So I've got myself some Bristol Smooth 100-pound cardstock. And I'm going to place it in my stamping platform. I think I'm going to place it a little ways up, I think. Let's see. Because that stamp is big. I mean, it will cover the whole thing. And I want about a ½ inch at the top, after the top of the stamp. Just so, you know, for aesthetics purposes, I don't want it to be completely full. So I will pull it up here a little bit and place her where I need her to go. And go ahead and put the lid down on my stamping platform, and then I'm going to throw on some anti-static powder here so that when I emboss it, I don't have any kind of strays that will impede the stenciling we're going to do later. So I'm going to go ahead and get this stamp nice and wet with my VersaFine Claire in the, not the Nocturne, but the Twilight. And then I've got my clear embossing powder off to the side here. I want to make sure it's nice and wet, and I'm just going to give it one stamp. That's all it's going to need because I just re-inked my ink just this morning. So just kind of give this a little push and reach over here and grab my clear embossing powder. Make sure that it's coated on all parts. And I think, yeah, we're good. We're golden. All right, let's get this out of the way and go ahead and put our embossing powder on. And you don't absolutely have to emboss this at all. I just chose to because I'm going to be coloring it afterwards. Not really coloring it, but tinting it. So I'm going to go ahead and heat emboss this, and I'll be back when it's dry. All right, it's dry and nice and cool. I want to make sure there's no sticky parts, because the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my antique linen ink and my, I've got this flat brush that I bought on Amazon. I really like it for big areas like this. And I'm not looking to do it perfect. Remember, this one's going to be ultra grungy. I just kind of want to wipe off here this little bit of embossing powder because it's going to make my stuff not stick, and I need it to stick. All right, and I'm just going to come in and just start slapping that antique linen ink down. Now notice I didn't say I'm using oxide, I'm using ink. You could use whatever. You don't have to tint it. You could leave it white. You could tint it purple. Whatever you want to do, you do you. But I'm going for grungy, and I'm actually going for ultra grungy on this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and get the ink down here, and a lot of the parts of this video I will speed up. Now, Technique Junkies stamps are a high-quality red rubber stamp. Not only does Pat sell stamps on TechniqueJunkies.com, but she also sells Catherine Pooler ink. She sells stencils. She sells all kinds of stuff. So if you use my coupon code TJ10Color, you can get 10% off. So that's a good deal. So now I'm going to take my decal trimmer, and I'm going to trim this down to 4 by 5 1/4. So I'm trimming just a tiny bit off the top, and then I'll get my 5 1/4 because my Bristol Smooth, I cut it a little bit extra big. Just, you know, room for error, things like that. I'm just going to cut a tiny bit off of this side and then trim it down to 4 inches. so that our little figure is kind of centered. Now, you could cut it beforehand and center your figure afterwards, because sometimes, you know, you'll find that you don't get the right amount of space. And in an image like this, she's all over the place, right? She's to the left, she's to the right, and so trying to get everything centered can be tricky. So I've got my Wendy Vecchi Make Art Station here and my little pad, and this is a mask that I created. And I'll pop a link to how I make these masks in the description box below. What I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully lay my mask onto my embossed image. Now, it can be tricky because the mask doesn't necessarily like to stick to embossing powder. You know, after it's been dried, of course it's going to stick if it's wet, but after it's been melted, it's a little bit slick. So I'm going to show you how to kind of get around that. So you're going to lay your mask down, and when you're stenciling, you want to be careful that you don't lift your mask. So I'm just going to make sure everything's all nice and even on there. And then I'm going to get out my rays mask from a Colorful Life Designs and decide where I want the rays to kind of hit. And I think I'm going to go right, I'm going to make the center right in the middle of her face. And I'll go ahead and put my magnets down. And you don't have to watch me stencil the whole thing. I'll just get you started and then you'll see how it goes. So I've got it nice and secured down there. My mat will hold my my panel still. I've got the cranberry fizz, and the trick here is to go only out. So don't rub back and forth, just go from the center out as you stencil. And me, I want to get this nice and dark because, again, we're going for ultra grunge on this one. And I'll go ahead and finish stenciling this up here. And, well, I guess, you know, I like to turn my board, by the way. Okay, so there we go. We've got our stencil done, and now it's behind her because we had her masked off, which masking is one of my favorite things to do to kind of keep my cards a little flat. So now I'm going for the ultra grunge here. And I'm taking my vintage photo and I'm just kind of going around the edges, and I'm going to come into the picture as well after I've gone on the edge. So I don't want to dip in my ink and go direct to picture, but I do want to get this one real dirty. So I'm really kind of lightly going over, but it is, you know, darkening everything down, getting it dirty. And then I'm going to go over the edges again with a walnut stain. You could even do black if you wanted to. That'd look cool. But I'm going for a vintagey look, so that's where we're going with that. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to spray a little bit of water. Let me make sure I don't have any red ink left over on that pad. I'm going to spray a little water here, and I'm going to take my fan brush and just get it wet, and I'm going to tap the water on. I prefer going this way versus just squirting it because I really don't want any giant globs. And then I'll grab a little bit of my Dress Blues ink and water it down. And I'll go over with some of this Dress Blues just to kind of give, you know, a little bit more pops of color here. So we want to dry that, let it dry, set it aside, and we'll go ahead and get to work on our sentiment. So I've got my stamping platform, and I do like to use my Tim Holtz platform for the Technique Junkies stamps. You could use your Misty, just make sure you take the mouse pad out, and I've got a piece of paper there that I accidentally got inky fingers on, but there's plenty there to use for my sentiment. So I'm going to grab the God Bless the USA stamp, and I'll be stamping that down also in the VersaFine Clair in the Twilight color, and I'll be heat embossing it. So got my placement. I'm going to go ahead and use my anti-static powder bag and kind of wipe that down. And here's my clear embossing powder in this little makeup drawer type thing. Well, this thing has lasted me forever. So I'm trying to get the same kind of red, white, and blue effect that I have on the card. Now you could stamp this directly down on the card, but you would have some issues because you've got a lot of line art work on that Statue of Liberty, and I think it would just get lost in there. So I like this option a little bit better. Generally, you know me, I like to stamp my stuff directly down. Once in a while, though, I don't mind a popped up, you know, a square popped up sentiment. I like, you know, the die cut types. Those are pretty cool, but this is a nice intricate design. I love the design. It's very patriotic. And after all, what's more patriotic than the Statue of Liberty? So I'll go ahead and heat emboss that, and then what we're going to be doing is coloring in the bottom half. And you'll see that half of it is white. It's delineated, so it's easy to color the bottom half without messing up at all. So I'm going to use my Tombow pen and my Cranberry Fizz, and this is just a clear marker. And I'm just going to go in and color in all the little bottom halves of those letters. Very simple to do. You could skip this. You could color it with regular markers. This is Bristol Smooth paper. You could watercolor, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting it too wet because it tends to, at least in my observation, it tends to, if you're using like doing it on white, anything wet on there tends to kind of go gray. So, you probably want to avoid getting it too wet. But it doesn't take long at all to color these in. They're done. And then all I need to do is trim this down, and I'm going to trim it very, very close. Just using my trimmer, and I'm kind of just eyeballing it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be pretty close to perfect because I'm just kind of a little bit picky. A little bit. I don't want it to be crooked on there at all. There we go. Now all I have left to do is grunge up the edges of that sentiment. So I'm going to do the same way with my distressing vintage photo. And just kind of go around the edges, and then I'll smear some a little bit in the middle because we're going for ultra grunge. It's still a little bit lighter, but I don't want it to go too dark. I'm going to have a little bit of contrast there in that picture. And I'm just making sure the edges are nice and dark. All right, so all that's left to do here is to put this thing together. What I have here is some twine, and this, I probably got it at the dollar store. I don't know, but I'm gonna wrap it 4 times around just so I can get my measurement and try not to let it roll away. Y'all, yesterday I lost an entire wooden stamp on my floor. It dropped while I was putting them away, those little alphabet ones that are kind of tall. And it's gone. It just disappeared. So I'm just going to kind of get my placement on there. Decide where I like it. And you, of course, could skip this step, but it really does add a little bit of extra to your cards. And I'm just going to take some washi tape and tape down both of the other ends of the twine here. And what you get with my brand new thing of washi tape is apparently this was not very good washi tape because first of all, I can't find the end. And then when I do find the end, it wants to completely split up on me. So yeah, I probably won't be buying that brand again. That was a Park Lane. It was a bargain thing, like $15 and then 40% off. I want to say at Joann. Well, you get what you pay for, right? I mean, it works after you get it going, but still, when it splits like that, it's pretty maddening. It's kind of like if you have packing tape and you don't have a packing tape cutter and you just fight with it all the time. Okay, just making sure I'm good on my placement here. I'll flip it over and tape that part down too. I just don't want it to move because I'm going to do another thing to it. So I'm not crazy about the fact that it's ultra white. So I'm going to take my antique linen distress ink and I'm just going to kind of rub it on that string so that it gets, an equally grungy, vintagey feel. Takes, what, 2 seconds? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this up with some foam tape onto a craft color card base. And then I'll pop up also the sentiment on the same foam tape, well, the same size foam tape. Just trying to grab my craft cardstock here. All right, yep, like the way that looks. Let's go ahead and get it popped up. grab my scissors. You know, whenever I'm trying, my stuff's always in my face when I don't need it. So, but if you guys see that little stamp anywhere, so it's part of a cool little alphabet said, I need it. There we go. We've got that all popped up. And I've got these stars, so I pre-made a bunch of them. And I'm going to grab some blue and some gold. In our original, we only had blue. But I think I want some gold on here too. And I'm just going to kind of select out some stars and place them where I want. And I end up taking that star off because it's a little bit too sparkly. It doesn't go with the other ones. So the other ones I had heat embossed with the same blue ink just on a plain piece of paper and then cut them out. So with the VersaFine Clair in the Twilight. So I'm just going to place my stars around and get them glued down. Kind of decide where I want them. I think I want another gold one over here. Grab a gold one out of here with my little, there we go. Now I'm happy. All right, let's get these bad boys glued down. Do I need another? Yeah, one more gold. Why not? And I just cut those out with this little die, and I just keep the die. This is a little matchbox that I made from one of my Tim Holtz and Sizzix Biggs dies. And so for small stuff like that, I like to keep it like that. So there we go. We have our Ultra Grunge, and we have our regular grunge. Hey, let me know in the description box which you prefer, extra grunge or light grunge. And today, again, we used the Statue of Liberty stamp from Technique Junkies and the God Bless the USA from the June release. Thanks so much. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Bye-bye.